what I say that abductions and Friday arrests must come to an end. Violation of human rights only agitates members of the public, because whenever you show might is right, the citizens will retaliate when they feel that they have been pushed to absolutely too much. Because as a country that is coming out from prayer days and people saying we are starting afresh and we are trying to reconcile, we cannot then throw back that at their faces to show a sign of the Friday arrests. In this country, we've known what Friday arrests were all about. It was a way of intimidation, it was a way of frustration, it was a way of showing you what government machinery was all about. And we urge our officers to follow the law. There's nothing stopping you from arresting somebody on a date that they can be presented before a court of law. Let them be charged for whatever offenses that they are deemed to have committed. That's why our courts are there. That's why the laws are there to govern everyone, not only the citizens, but also the police. And we remind the National Police Service that you serve as an independent unit, and that if you fail to serve the people of Kenya and abuse your power, then the Constitution will not remain silent. We urge the courts not to remain silent, and that you must remember there's something called personal responsibility. When you violate rights, abusing your position, there comes a time when the law will catch up to you. And so we can only say that as the Law Society will try and ensure that we defend those who have been frustrated and the human rights have been violated. And we urge that police to restrain themselves to avoid agitating members of the public. Kenya is our country, Kenya is our home, and we owe it for us to celebrate as a nation that upholds the rule of law, good governance, and democracy principles, that we live by those same principles. Thank you. On the Tundu Lissu case, because we were just observers and we have not seen justice, the course of justice to its natural end. So I'd be presumptuous to state that there would be no justice for Tundu Lissu, there will be justice for Tundu Lissu until we see how the process goes through, whether his rights are heard under the Constitution and the courts are able to protect his rights under that Constitution. So once the lawyer is able to raise alarm as to the treatment or the court processes, then we'll be able to comment on the same. Regionally, we can look at to what extent can the African Union come in with regards to the concerns that are being had, because I know a matter had already been filed at Tanzania, but also there's the East Africa courts that are there, that in terms of violation of human rights, citizens of the East Africa can file their claims, and several have filed before that honorable court. Even violations in Kenya have been filed before the East African Court of Justice before justice has been had for those who sought the audience of that court. And so there are still avenues and ambits that hopefully we can look into. But we are hoping that the interventions of the other governments within the regions and the petition to the East Africa Parliament can raise awareness and raise concerns that those officers who violated the rights of Boniface, Agatha, amongst others, can be brought to book.
Thank you. I'm going to touch on
the petition to the East Africa Law Society Parliament. That is one avenue. I'm aware that the East Africa Law Society had filed a case already in Tanzania with regards to the treatment and harassment not only of Boniface and Agatha, but also of Martha Karua. And so we'll wait to see the status. With regards to the question of the lawyers, well, that's also shocking for us, because at the East Africa Law Society, we strive to work together as all the bar associations. And our relationship has always been quite good, and so we'll be reaching out to find out what happened. Because I remember the first point of call, particularly even to assist Martha Karua, was the current bar association, in Tanzania, and he was able to respond, and we were able to secure the release of not only Martha Karua, Gloria, and Martha Karua's personal assistant, and they were released and they were able to safely come back to Kenya. And so this revelation, we will also follow it up and find out what happened. And of course, we must ensure that we secure also to protect those advocates who are in that country, because if they face possible harm and torture, then we'll have to look for avenues rather than focusing on the Tanzanian system, to look regional as to where compensation for the torture and violations that they experienced in the country.
Thank you, Madam President. Eric Mukoya.
Thanks, Peggy.
First of all, the issue of cross-border practice is a sensitive issue, because advocates from Kenya have not yet been allowed to practice in Tanzania, irrespective of there being the East African Agreement. Kenya, through the changes of our law, Uganda and Tanzania are allowed to practice in Kenya. However, Kenyans are not allowed. Even in Uganda, we still have a challenge in accrediting advocates, and that's why I think you saw the struggle that Martha Karua continued to have. It took the intervention of not only the Kenyan bar but the Ugandan bar to ensure that Martha got a license, but then again, even the license was temporary. And so practice in the East African region, it's still a very dicey concern, because Kenyans are barred by their laws and procedural issues. They prevent advocates who should naturally be able to practice, as our laws have allowed them, that we should be able to enjoy cross-border practice. And then, of course, it wouldn't have been an issue to immediately use even our members across the region. Now, that said, so we are looking for different avenues, and the East African Court of Justice is still an avenue if there is no justice at the Tanzanian courts. As citizens of the East African community, there is free movement of persons, and therefore we ought to be allowed to proffer our cases, as long as we are not breaking any national laws of the Tanzanian government, which they are yet to show the laws that were broken. Now, with the issue of Rose Njeri, first of all, we cannot prepare in advance, because we don't sit with the police to know what they are planning, and so that we can plan how to retaliate in the event that they decide to pick people.